kids, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is a lean productivity and efficiency expert, founder, business owner of OE Partners, no other than Mr. Damien Lacey.
Hello, Daniel, and thank you for having me on the podcast today. Looking forward to chatting.
Yes, welcome to Book 101, Mr. Damien. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I'm the founder of a lean productivity improvement company consultancy called Operational Excellence Partners. My background, I'm a mechanical engineer by training, spent a lot of time working in the automotive industry, worked in a car parts manufacturing company called Robert Bosch. Um, they were rolling out lean productivity methods and principles in their factory, and I joined that team, which is great. Seeing how all of these tools and principles can really improve the performance of a business and a manufacturing facility. And after that, I was really hooked. I was really excited about the impact that these methods can make. I wanted to learn from the source. A lot of the ideas to drive improvement in productivity and efficiency came from Toyota, that the Toyota production system. So I was keen to learn from the source. I then joined Toyota in their product development team in Australia. That involved getting shipped over to Japan for a few years for brainwashing. So I spent a few years working in Toyota and a number in Japan in head office. Yeah, lots of cost reduction, lots of process improvement, um, getting cost out of products, getting cost out of process, and then came back to Australia. The automotive industry in Australia sort of wound up, and then I decided to start consulting to Australian businesses on how to become more productive, how to become more efficient, and yeah, and so this book, um, it's pretty close to my heart. It's pretty influential in terms of the work that I do, the work that my team does with organizations, and basically helps organizations from all different industries um, improve productivity, become more efficient.
Mr. Damien, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. What inspired Toyota to pioneer lean production and how did it differ from Ford's mass production model?
Yeah, so it's an interesting book because it does chart a pretty significant shift that happened. Um, Now, the industry in question is the automotive industry, but that's not to say that what's written in there can't be applied and has been applied in every different industry you can imagine. Um, but it was, yeah, talking about a pretty significant shift that happened. You had mass production pioneered by Ford, um, Model T Ford, any color you'd like as long as it's black, a standard product, very, very efficient manufacturing, very, very cost effective compared to what had come before. Um, but as you know, and your listeners know, we're not all driving around in black Model T Fords, right? There are thousands and thousands of different vehicles, different shapes, different sizes, and even within each, individual vehicle, there are then additionally thousands and thousands of different variations. You get different colors, different specs, different options, different suspensions. It is absolutely mind blowing the amount of variation that product category has gone through in the 20th century. From starting out with pretty standard black Model Ts all the way up to tens and tens of thousands of and really hundreds of thousands of product variations. So how did it happen? How could that industry, the automotive industry, manage to produce that amount of variation, and keeping it pretty cost effective. Cars are expensive, don't get me wrong, but without lean manufacturing methods that Toyota really pioneered, um, we wouldn't be able to afford the cars that we drive today. It'd be like living in, Stalin driven Russia, or the Soviet bloc countries back in the 80s, where you had to literally wait 18 months for a car through a lottery, right? We don't live in that world, partly because of the innovations and the ideas that are laid out in this book.
Interesting indeed, Mr. Damien. And how did post World War II Japan's economic constraints shape the development of the Toyota production system?
Yeah, this is the interesting thing, and it's kind of inspirational for anyone in business. You think, come on, my situation's pretty tough. I don't have a lot of resources. I don't have access to great people, to high end technology. How am I going to compete with the best in the world? And that's kind of the situation that Japan found itself in. They had been beaten, you know, physically, mentally, any way you want to put it, by the other industrial powers in the world. Um, and they didn't have a lot of resources. Material was in short supply, labor was actually in short supply, and also the customers that they didn't have um, thousands and thousands of cars to make for one order. They had lots of like pockets of demand. You'd have a couple of high-end cars for government officials. You might have a small number of cheaper utility vehicles for small farmers. You might have a passenger vehicle for a small family in an urban setting. So it was really, really tough. And everything was limited, everything was constrained. And so it really forced the Japanese manufacturers, car companies, to do to do more with less, right? And so that really drove them to be able to create efficient processes where they couldn't just set up a machine and run it for 1,000. They had to set up a machine, run it for 10, change over the machine, run another 20, change it over again. And so it really forced them to be flexible, to be adaptable, and get more out with less. So that was kind of the
Adaptable.
context that they had to operate in.
Adaptable indeed. So let's talk about the principles of lean production, Mr. Damien. How
Mhm.
does just in time manufacturing reduce waste while maintaining efficiency?
Yeah, I mean that is one key idea from the production system, the Total Production System book, and way of working. So just in time is basically making sure that you don't make a whole bunch of stuff that no one's going to buy. Right? You're running a factory, and you might think, well, I want to set up machine once, keep everyone utilized, keep my machines running. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to produce a thousand pieces, right? Because that works for me. It keeps everyone busy for a week, keeps the machines fully utilized for a week. So my cost per piece is great, right? But if no one wants to buy those 1,000 cars right now, or those 1,000 products right now, you're left with a whole bunch of inventory that you're sitting around waiting for a customer, and that causes a few problems, right? You've got money tied up on that in that inventory. It costs time, it costs materials, it costs equipment, it costs labor to create. So that's money sitting around, and also you've got to store it somewhere. You've got to walk around it. You might have to double handle it. It causes all these knock-on wastes and inefficiencies. Now, you might eventually get a customer to buy it. You're pressured though to discount it because you want them to buy it as much as they want to buy it, and so there's a bit of a pressure there. So all these problems happen when you make lots of inventory um, ahead of a customer's order. So instead of that, if you can trigger your production in smaller quantities based on what someone actually wants, um, you're going to solve all those problems of lots of inventory. You know, I'll give you another example, probably a bit more practical, if you like. Do you remember, Daniel, walking into a McDonald's stores in the 90s, in the 2000s? I think it was about that time. Um,
Yes.
Now, if you walked in, you'd see, I'd expect, a whole bunch of burgers, sitting there under the heat lamps, ready to go. Yeah,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
You walk in, you grab your burger, they put it in a bag, you're out the door really, really quickly, really efficiently. That's a great customer experience, right?
Yes.
However, you also have some downsides with that problem, as you can imagine. If you've got a whole range of burgers sitting there under the heat lamps waiting for someone to buy, what can happen?
Well, if they will not buy, the food will be spoiled, and for sure the quality will not that good
Yeah,
as it was
that's
before.
That's two really good points. You're going to be throwing out a lot of burgers, and even the burgers that you put in a bag, they're not going to be the best because they've been sat there for maybe a half an hour, right? So they're two, really important problems that is caused by making ahead of time, making in large quantities. So instead, McDonald's have applied these same principles. How about we wait for the customer's order and we set up our processes so that we can get that burger cooked fresh, delivered in their hand within a minute, right? Something, a time frame that the customer is still going to be okay with. And so that's what they've done. And they've produced fresher burgers, and they've done it with less costs because they're not throwing away a bunch of materials every day. So that's sort of a good example of what just in time is, and why it's valuable, why it's important.
Very well said, Mr. Damian. Beautifully articulated as well as the analogy. Let's talk about the production itself. So,
Mhm.
what role does Kaizen play in sustaining lean practices?
Yeah, look, that's another key idea from this book, and a key attribute of a lean production system, a lean business system versus a traditional production system. So Kaizen, first, what is it? It's it's just a direct translation in Japanese for continuous improvement. Okay, that's what the translation is: continuous improvement. So you can use it interchangeably. It's not a magical word. It just means continuous improvement. Now, businesses that are looking at these lean methods, these principles from Toyota, can sort of turn their nose up a little bit at this idea around continuous improvement or Kaizen, thinking, well, look, improvement, that's a nice idea. But to be honest, I employ people to do a job, carry out a functional role. That's their job for 8 hours of the day. If they come up with an idea here or there, is that really going to change my business? Is that really going to change our performance? Well, the shorter answer is yes, it will. The caveat is that it won't change your business in a day or in a week, right? But if you can consistently identify a problem, identify something that's a little bit, time consuming, it's a waste of effort, it's a mistake, and fix it properly, improve it. Those things will cumulatively add up over time to something significant. It's it's that theory of one percenters. The theory of marginal gains, um, where if you can find a 1% improvement every day, every week, well, over the course of a year, a decade, that actually translates into a huge difference. And there's a host of examples where this has been proven out in sport. The British racing bicycle racing team, they were a big proponent of this idea of marginal gains, these 1% gains, all the way through. How do we make the seats um, lighter? How do we streamline the frame? How do we reduce friction in the gearing mechanism? How do we improve our diet? All that kind of stuff. sport is a good example of where these kinds of incremental gains make a big a big impact. The other thing, though, so it's not just the direct benefits you get from fixing little problems every day. Um, when you're fixing and improving and changing things every day in a little way, what do you know? When you're required to make a big change, you get much better at it. So, hang on, demand for this product or service has dropped. We need to shift more of our attention over to a new product, or we need to develop a completely new service line. So that kind of step change, companies that can do the little changes are much, much better at the big changes as well. So it's not just about, incremental one percenters. It's also getting you ready for the big changes also.
Yes, indeed. Kaizen. Why is empowering frontline workers critical to lean success, and how does it challenge traditional hierarchies?
That's a good question. So, why do I have to worry about the frontline team? They are traditionally the lowest tier of the organization. They may not be getting paid the most. Um, so, there can be a natural inclination to talk to the middle tiers or the upper levels in the organization to really drive change, really drive improvement. Now, the fact is, your frontline team are the solid gold experts of what's happening in your business. They are interacting with your customers day in and day out, dealing with real issues, fulfilling real customer requirements, listening to complaints, seeing interruptions. There's such a vast goldmine of data and information and ideas in that frontline team, that not tapping into that is a serious competitive disadvantage, right? So the best ideas will, without doubt, right, come from the people who are on the pitch, so to speak, or at the coalface dealing with your customers. So they're a great source of ideas. They're also a great sanity check or sounding board for any idea that you may have if you're not directly dealing with customers, and tell you what will work, what won't work. And it will, really reduce time spent on ideas that weren't, good to begin with, or they'll reduce the trial and error loops. Um, so yeah, your frontline team really are vital to your success.
Vital indeed, Mr. Damien. As a lean productivity and efficiency expert, founder, business owner, what are your short term and long term goals?
My personal short-term and long-term goals, is it, or are you talking about for industries in general, or?
You, as
Ah,
you.
okay, so we're talking about, yeah. So, you know, I love doing what I do, and my team loves doing what we do. We're fortunate to be able to work with businesses day in and day out on how to get better. You know, how to find the key constraints in the business. What's really going to unlock the performance of that organization, dig into what needs to happen, turn it into plans, and help them implement. So that's what we do, and we're very fortunate to be able to do that. Yeah, that's what we're going to continue to do. In addition to that, we're also now looking more of in terms of business acquisition style of work. So instead of only working for clients, but also then identifying businesses that we can acquire, manage, and turn around. So that's also a second strategy that we've implemented as of late last year. So that's another exciting another journey that we're on.
Another journey indeed, and good luck to your goals, Mr. Damian. Looking for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be lean as you in terms of productivity, efficiency, founder as a business owner?
Sure. That's a great question. How can people pick up the ideas from this book and actually turn them into action? Um, Now it depends on your situation. These ideas, they're a great set of ideas that will definitely make any business run better. But start small and be successful is a good piece of advice. Don't try and change too many things all at once. There's probably about 20, 30 ideas in that book that you could implement, and not all of them will be successfully implemented all at once. So picking one or two things. One of the key tools and ideas in there is really mapping out your process, looking at the value stream, how all the activity that happens in your organization, what's actually creating value for the customer, what's not creating value for the customer, being really clear about that. So you might want to map out like a small bit of your business with that tool to get some clarity and some ideas. Another simple tool that businesses use successfully is um, lean workplace organization, 5S workplace organization. So it's like cleaning and tidying and organizing yourself. Conceptually, very simple, having a place for everything and everything in its place. Um, Not a hard idea to get your head around. Start implementing that in one part of your business, or if it's in your personal life, maybe it's in your garage or somewhere like that. It's simple, it's straightforward. It will immediately have an impact. Or a third idea, and how to pick some of these ideas up and implement them. Visualization is a key concept. Don't talk to me, show me. You know, be able to demonstrate or explain something visually. So for people who are listening to this podcast, they're probably interested in, productivity, how to become more effective. Well, let's start with you as an individual. What's the work that you're doing today? What are the tasks you have on the go? List them out, put it on a board, put it on a tool, like it could be a software tool like Asana or one of the others. Um, show yourself and potentially others what is important to you, what you're working on. Again, that could be a great first step to pick up some of the ideas from this book and apply it to your personal work life. So there's three, Daniel.
Thank you for your advice, Mr. Damien. And what misconceptions about lean does the book clarify and which persist today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the book, it is very, very much about the automotive industry. Okay. The ideas came from there. And so there is an idea that they're very well suited to automotive, but not so well suited anywhere else. And granted, you do need to think a bit carefully about how can I apply these tools that came from the car industry and apply it to healthcare, or to apply it to financial services, or where logistics, or wherever. Um, you're fortunate these days in that there are plenty of case studies. There's plenty of examples. And in fact, there's even books focused on those specific industries that will help you make the leap from uh, this book with its automotive examples into your industry. It's not a question of will these ideas work in healthcare or in retail or in financial services. That question has been answered. Yes, they will. They will. It's just how to. That's the key question, and that's where there's a bit of thought that needs to be put into translating. So that's one key misconception.
Mr. Damien, what leadership mindset is required to sustain lean practices in a rapidly changing world?
Yes. How do you sustain? What a good question, what a pertinent question. These ideas, they are powerful, they're simple, and when they get implemented, they can make a big difference quickly. They can make a real difference quickly. And what can happen is managers, leaders can sort of step back, pack themselves in the back. Look how clean and organized it is now because we've implemented 5S. Look how well managed our teams are because we've created visualization boards for workloads, and then move on to the next thing. So, like anything, how something is sustained is as important as getting it into place in the first place. So what I would suggest is, once you've made a change, let's say it's 5S plus workplace organization, or you've created a new visual management board that manages yourself, that's the first step. Sustaining it is as important. So thinking as consciously about getting it in place, how do we make sure it stays in place? So thinking about that job as much as you thought about getting it in place in the first place. So hang on, this is a new system. People who are using it now, they're going to leave the organization, they're going to move, they're going to cycle through. When a new person comes in, we need to make sure we're training them on this system, right? People who are using the system, this new method, they're excited about it because they were involved in implementing it. Will the next set of people coming in be as excited? Maybe not. Well, we need to make sure it's part of their roles and responsibilities. It's part of their job description. I'm a manager and I'm looking at this new system and I'm excited about it. But hang on, will the team continue to be excited about it if I stop looking at it, if I stop paying attention? Well, probably not. So as a leader, I need to, check in and review and feedback progress on this system for the long term, right? So maybe it's part of your quarterly review meetings. Maybe there's an audit score you can put in place. You need to demonstrate interest as a leader. So these are all steps that are nothing to do with getting it in place in the first place. These are all separate steps to make sure it sticks. So that's super important as a leader, to put as much effort into the stickiness of your new system as you did to put it in place in the first place.
Again, Mr. Damian, very well said. Beautifully articulated. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course my book 101 review in its fifth season, comedy 101 in second season, and of course my food 101 in its fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, love letters in third season, and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101. My movie 101 review is in fourth season, and music 101 in its third season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Damien, what leadership mindset is required to sustain lean practices in a rapidly changing world?
Well, I think you've got the answer to that one, hopefully.
Yes.
So we can skip maybe to your next question.
Oh, yes. My apologies for that.
That's okay.
How does lean reconcile quality control with cost reduction, seemingly opposing goals?
Yeah, this is sort of a bit of a another misconception that by improving quality, you're going to increase costs. But in actual fact, if you don't make bad parts to begin with, or you don't deliver bad service to begin with, you don't have to pay for quality down the track. So um, the key is to prevent mistakes from happening in the first place. So if you can upfront plan your product design or your service design or um, your delivery process, how can we make sure that the problems that could happen don't happen, and really think about it before it happens and prevent it in the first place. When you do that, you don't have to deal with bad parts. You don't have to deal with rework. You don't have to deal with customer complaints, which take up a lot of time. Important and essential, but it's a waste of time. Um, if you can prevent the problem, it ends up being cheaper in the long term, and and in the short and medium term as well. So that's kind of a misconception there. So if you can prevent the problem, you'll be more cost effective as well.
Indeed, fix it immediately. And what surprised you the most about the research behind this groundbreaking book?
Well, I wouldn't say so much as surprised me, but just sort of reconfirm why it's such a good book. They've done a great job, to put it to put it simply, and I'm not sure that James Womack and his scholars need me to say that, but it's excellently researched. They have gone to not a handful; they've gone to almost 100 different factories. They've gone through all steps of the chain, right from customer marketing, sales, production, delivery, aftermarket. They've done a really thorough job, and they've backed it up with a really thorough amount of data, and so all of the points they're making is backed up with data. So that really is why it's such an excellent book, and it really is up there in terms of business management books.
Mr. Damien Lacey, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge as well as your wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your business itself?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you'd like to get in touch, ask me a question, get some ideas, probably easiest way is to reach out to me on LinkedIn. So Damien.Lacey, on LinkedIn, if you type that in, OE Partners, drop me a line, ask me a question. Happy to help and happy to start a conversation.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Damien Lacey because if you support him, more and more and more lean business to come. So, Mr. Damien, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Great job. It was a really good conversation. Appreciate it.
Modicon people, see you soon.